So we just got some unfortunate news about the Dallas Cowboys that basically means their season is over at the halfway point. Then there's a few more moves made around the league worth talking about after the dust settled from the trade deadline, and Buffalo is going through some wide receiver injury woes on top of all that. So let's talk about it right after. First up, the Bills may not have gotten in on the trade deadline fun yesterday, but they did add a couple of defensive tackles to their roster. First, they signed Quentin Jefferson, who the Browns released yesterday after not being able to find a trade partner. He's in his 9th season in the league and actually played for Buffalo back in 2020, so he'll head back there for at least the rest of the season. They're also reuniting with Jordan Phillips for a third time. He played for them back in 2018 and 2019, then had another stint with the team in 2022 and 2023 before signing with the Giants and eventually getting traded to Dallas. He only appeared in 2 games this season as he's been on IR with a wrist injury, but he returned to practice a few weeks ago and should be good to go here soon. It makes sense for the Bills. They bring back a couple of familiar faces and add some depth to their D-line that's allowing the 15th most rushing yards per game. Their path to a Super Bowl is going to run through the Chiefs and Ravens, both of whom run the piss out of the ball, the Ravens especially, but the Chiefs are running it more than ever in the Mahomes era, so the Bills are going to need all the help they can get up front. And staying with the Bills here, Sean McDermott actually told the media today that rookie receiver Keon Coleman could miss multiple weeks with a wrist injury that he picked up in Sunday's win over the Dolphins. We don't have any official word on what exactly the injury is, like if it's a sprain, a fracture, or whatnot, but he did undergo some testing earlier in the week, and I'm assuming it came back not looking great, which is why he's going to miss a few weeks. It's certainly a bummer for both the Bills and Keon Coleman, as he was second on the team in receiving yards and tied for the most touchdowns with 3. Thankfully for them, they just acquired Amari Cooper, so I expect him to get even more targets now in Coleman's absence. The interesting thing to note here about Cooper is he's actually dealing with a wrist injury of his own that kept him out of last week's game. He was a limited participant in practice today, though, so it seems like at least early in the week he's trending upwards and could be ready for game day. If both Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper are out, though, then it's going to be the Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid show. They're going to get a lion's share of the targets, at least. I actually, speaking of Khalil Shakir, saw this wild stat about him today. Look at this. Since 1992, when targets first started getting tracked, Khalil Shakir currently has the highest single-season catch rate by a wide receiver with 40 or more targets. The guy in second, also Khalil Shakir from last season. I don't know why I decided to yell there, but that's pretty freaking crazy. Anyway, another receiver who will be out for at least one more week is T. Higgins. At least it's looking that way because he's listed as doubtful for tomorrow night's game against the Ravens. He's already missed the last 2 games with a quad injury, and unfortunately, it's looking like it's going to be 3. Meanwhile, the Ravens will be without tight end Isaiah Likely as he's been ruled out with a hamstring injury, but this game on Thursday night is going to be a banger. The Bengals' playoff hopes actually quite literally depends on this game, so they're basically going to treat this one like a playoff game. Meanwhile, the Ravens are going to have even more of a stranglehold in their division and in the AFC. Even though the Chiefs are at the top, we know, but they'll be one of the top if they can get this W, so I cannot wait for this game on Thursday Night Football. And let's just keep the wide receiver news going here. Good news for the Texans is star receiver Nico Collins has reportedly passed every test in his hamstring recovery with no setbacks. He's ready to go, and the team is just deciding if they want to bring him back as early as this Sunday's game against the Lions or give him a little bit more time. He didn't practice today, so his status for Sunday is going to depend largely on his practice status later throughout the week, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Either way, it's big news for Houston, whose offense looked anemic the last time we saw them on Thursday Night Football against the Jets. Granted, a large part of that was because of their offensive line woes, but still, C.J. Stroud clearly missed both Collins and Stephon Diggs, who's out for the year with an ACL tear. At the time that Nico got injured, he was leading the league in receiving yards with 567 through 5 games. So yeah, he will definitely be a welcomed addition to Houston's offense. Someone else who will be a welcomed addition to their team is Panthers rookie running back Jonathan Brooks. The Panthers drafted him 46th overall in this year's draft, but he's yet to play as he's been recovering from a torn ACL that he sustained last year in college. He started the season on IR, but Carolina opened up his 21-day practice window a few weeks ago and just activated him to the 53-man roster today. Doesn't guarantee that he's going to play this week, but he was a full participant at practice today, so it seems like it's trending in the right direction. If he does play, I think he's going to be taking handoffs from Bryce Young, who Dave Canales confirmed will once again be the starter this week. They'll be taking on Daniel Jones and the Giants in Germany on Sunday. And on behalf of the United States of America, I would like to publicly apologize, Germany. I am so sorry for this game. Speaking of teams that basically nobody wants to watch, Trevor Lawrence was limited at practice today as he's dealing with some soreness in his non-throwing shoulder. Doug Peterson was asked if he'll be able to play on Sunday against the Vikings, to which he said, quote, can't answer that today, not sitting here on Wednesday. And this may be precautionary, but Jacksonville just signed quarterback C.J. Beathard off the Dolphins practice squad onto their active roster. So if Lawrence can't go, it'll be Mac Jones getting the start with Beathard backing him up. And then Micah Parsons made his return to practice today after missing the last 4 games with a high ankle sprain. He was a limited participant in practice, but Adam Schefter did say earlier this week that Parsons, quote, should be back for Sunday's game against the Eagles. And some more good news here is that CeeDee Lamb was also limited at practice today as he's working through that sprained AC joint. And that's a positive because Lamb said himself that he will be out there on Sunday. And while he may not be 100%, they're definitely going to need all the help they can get. And speaking of help, they're going to need help at quarterback because this Dak Prescott news does not look good. We already thought he would miss a few weeks with a hamstring injury, but Jane Slater, who works for NFL Network, she's a reporter for NFL Network, she said as the Cowboys weigh in on Dak Prescott's IR status, sources tell me the initial diagnosis is a partial avulsion of his hamstring tendon, which means it's partially torn off the bone. I'm told it typically takes more than a 4-week recovery. In some cases, they let it scar over, repair, then strengthen. With that being said, Prescott is seeking other opinions, which is why there is currently a reluctance to place him on IR or make any determinations about a timeline to return. This is not good news. He's probably missing the rest of the season. Jeff Mueller, who is a doctor of physical therapy, he said, see you in 2025, Dak Prescott. Dr. Jesse Morse then said, this is a big deal, and goes on to say these can take up to 6 weeks if surgery and up to 10 weeks to heal without surgery. And with it already being week 10, we're entering week 10 of the 2024 NFL season, that could, in theory, mean Dak Prescott is done for the entirety of the 2024 season, and the Cowboys season is basically all the way over. So that means Cooper Rush is the next man up under center until Dak gets back, whether that's in a few weeks or until the 2025 season, even though they did just give up a 4th-round pick last year to go and get Trey Lance. Even though injuries are not Jerry Jones's fault, he still might be the worst GM in sports right now. He just sent another 4th-rounder yesterday for Panthers receiver Jonathan Mingo, a guy who could barely get on the field even after Adam Thielen went on IR and Deontay Johnson got traded. Part of the reason for that could be because the Panthers were shopping him to get traded. I have no way of knowing that. But again, I can't just ream on the guy. But here's some context on how bad he's performed with the Panthers in his first 2 years. Among all 72 receivers that have had 50 or more receptions since the start of last season, Mingo ranks dead last in receiving yards, second to last in yards per route run, and dead last in catch rate. Yet, Geriatric Jones gave up more for him than the Chiefs gave up for DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe the Chiefs should have offered Jerry Sky Moore for a 1st-round pick because this man might have taken it. Okay, maybe not for Sky Moore, but still. To be fair to Mingo here as well, he's been on the Panthers. They are a horribly ran organization, one of the worst in the entire NFL, so I'm taking some of those stats with a grain of salt. He's also only 23 years old and will be in a much better ran organization, at least compared to the Panthers. It's a very low bar here, okay? But he could develop and grow. He's also going to have CeeDee Lamb to glean from after all, and if anyone can help out his game a little bit, it's going to be him. All right, next up, Preston Smith was traded from the Packers to the Steelers yesterday for a 7th-round pick, and despite Smith being 31 years old, it seemed like a pretty low price for an edge rusher that's had 6 seasons with 8 or more sacks in his career. However, Smith himself revealed today that he actually asked the Packers for a trade because he felt the Packers' new defensive scheme didn't fit his play style. Green Bay hired Jeff Hafley as their new defensive coordinator this season, and he transitioned the Packers' base scheme from a 3-4 to a 4-3. So on the outside looking in, it definitely checks out, as Smith had just 2.5 sacks through 9 games this season and is on pace to finish with the lowest amount of sacks since 2020 when he had just 4. It's honestly pretty respectable that the Packers not only honored his request, but they sent him to a contending team in the Steelers, who are 6-2 and are in first place in the AFC North. If he can get back to the player he was over the last 3 seasons when he had a combined 25.5 sacks, then the Steelers are going to be a problem for offenses, as he'll be lining up across from TJ Watt, who is arguably the best defensive player in football at the moment. Then, of course, the Steelers now also traded for Mike Williams, so they'll have him on the other side of the ball to complement their offense that is definitely more high-powered with Russell Wilson at the helm. Anyway, with that, that's all I have for today, so I'll see y'all next time.